related question. I was told by a sister company that the EPA will allow 448A to be used as a replacement for 404A for medium temp cases, and therefore 404A medium temp cases can be shipped into California even under the new guidelines. Is this correct?
What guideline? When you say guideline, what do you mean?
Senate bill. So the SB 1013, the California Cooling Act, does reference the US EPA SNAP acceptable list in the appendices, I think, U and V for rules 20 and 21. So if the US EPA SNAP program allows 448A and lists as acceptable, then by reference, it's also acceptable in California under SB 1013. The only caveat would be if a prohibited substance that was previously listed by the US EPA SNAP program now becomes acceptable under the SNAP program, they change their mind. It goes from prohibited to acceptable. That would require a separate rulemaking in California for us to list that as acceptable. But if it was never listed at all and is added to the list, then it automatically becomes acceptable in California. So again, there's just one national list of acceptable HSCs and new equipment.
And just to add again, this is Pamela. So until that happens, those are prohibited in California. So until EPA approves 448, 449, it's just prohibited because it's not allowed approved by EPA yet. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, Pamela. Could you say that again, please?
I was going to say, so at this point, because 448A and 449A are not on EPA's approved list, so they cannot be used in California either. So just want to make sure that that's clear. Until that happens, it still stays prohibited because it's not approved by EPA.
Yeah.
But because it wasn't on the approved prohibited list, it would automatically become, right? Exactly.
Once approved.
Right.
Yeah. So really, in other words, if a refrigerant or HFC is not listed anywhere in the SNAP program as acceptable or unacceptable, if it's not listed, it is unacceptable in California because the rule actually says you can only use SNAP-approved HFCs. So if you don't find it on the list anywhere as acceptable, you still can't use it.
Okay. So that covers any low GWP refrigerant, anything under 1,500, such as 448A, 449A, 449B, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Because they're not currently listed as acceptable in the SNAP program, so correct.
All right.
Charlie, this is Lauren McGowan from AHRI. I have a question for CARB regarding that. What if EPA has issued a letter of acceptance, a completeness letter issued that refrigerant can be used, but it is not yet listed on the EPA site? This is something that EPA allows for refrigerants that are in the process of being approved. How is CARB going to deal with that?
That's something we'll have to, look into. I don't have an answer right up front for that one. We'll have to discuss that or get some more information on what does that mean.
Okay. AHRI has submitted those to you in the past, and since EPA has allowed those refrigerants to be used, we have not, the rule doesn't say that they cannot be used in California as they exist today, so I think some clarification on that would be helpful.
Okay. And Lauren, just to be clear, so you're saying that because you got the letter of completeness from EPA, you're allowed to sell that equipment with those refrigerants, but if EPA comes out and disapproves it, the OEMs have to pull that equipment back. Is that how it works?
Right. There is a letter that is received that says may enter into commerce in certain applications. So like refrigeration would be listed on that as EPA makes the determination. And as long as they don't determine that refrigerant cannot be accepted in that use category, it wouldn't affect it down the road, right? It's sort of an interim step before approval.
Got it. Okay.
We can certainly give you some clarification on that one. I think we'd probably want to regroup a little bit just to make sure we understand a little bit more about the process before giving an answer. Good question, though.
Okay. Next question. Where can I find definitions for medium temp and low temp refrigeration? Are these definitions found in EPA SNAP, and are they determined by desired product temp, evaporator temp, or by the refrigerant classification?
Okay, the current California regulations do not define medium temp and low temp. The U.S. EPA has defined it in Section 608 of the Clean Air Act that covers the SNAP program. So this is a little bit nuanced, but California would be, I guess, inclined to interpret what EPA has used in the past as low temp and medium temp, and there is a definition in the Clean Air Act for low temp and medium temp. So, although it's not specifically cited in the California regulations, those would be the guidelines we would follow.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's generally understood in industry what that means, but
okay.
Happy to engage in further discussion if that's an issue.
I can.
There is some language in the Code of Federal Register that expands upon those medium temp and low temp.
Yeah, thank you. The Federal Register that covered SNAP Rule 20 from July 20th, 2015, it actually has a pretty good description of what the intent was for medium temp and low temp. It's on, anyway, it's on page 42900 on that Federal Register that covers the SNAP Rule 20. I can send the reference to everyone later.
Okay. Thank you. Next question. I'm looking for updates or confirmation regarding deadlines for the use of foam insulation in retail food refrigeration equipment. Specifically, the CARB final regulation order notes rigid polyurethane and polyisocyanates, I butchered that, laminated board stock foam with R134A is prohibited as of January 1st. But this indicates the foam itself is prohibited, not as a component of a piece of equipment. What do manufacturers need to know about the use of foam insulation, and where should they look to find the answers they need?
Okay, all closed cell and even open cell foam, that's polyurethane, polyisocyanurate, or other, is essentially covered in SNAP Rules 20 and 21. So the intent is to cover all foam made, whether it's a separate slab or piece of foam or it's inside a piece of equipment. So all foam or insulation inside a piece of equipment is covered. There's specific end-use sectors that are intended to cover all closed cell and open cell foams, even though a lot of people will look at those end-use sectors and say, well, my product doesn't fit into one of those. The reality is that the intent of SNAP was to cover all foam. So I guess the nuance would be to find out where your product fits into. And in terms of NAFM products, they would fit really into commercial refrigeration insulation. They could also be interpreted as fitting under appliance foam because the US EPA defines an appliance as any equipment that cools anything. All refrigeration equipment, huge, medium, and small, and all air conditioning equipment. So if you have a product and it is using this expanded foam, then it must be compliant. And because there are different dates when the effective date kicks in, again, it would be really good for the manufacturer if they're not sure to ask for clarification. Right now, the clarification I recommend is that if you make anything for refrigeration, it's commercial refrigeration. Even if it's a little tiny reach-in cooler for cream dispensers, or it could be anything, for an ice machine, a slushy machine, a blender, mixer.
So I think I'm looking at the dates. I think if it what Glenn is saying, if it fits mostly in the commercial refrigeration sandwich panels, then the effective date is not January 1, 2019, but January 1, 2020. So I think the question was more specific to how are we affected by January 1, 2019.
Yeah. So you're right. So the rigid polyurethane laminated board stock that started January 1st of this year really would not apply to the food equipment. It would be the commercial refrigeration, which starts January 1st, 2020. So, thank you. So there.
All right. I've got another question regarding disclosure statements, and I apologize that I hadn't noticed this when we were on that topic. But is the disclosure statement only required for sales transactions with California destinations or on all orders? We don't always know where the final destination of a product might be, so that's the nature of that question.
It's anything that comes into California. So if there's a likelihood that it's going to come into California, best to err on the side of safety, because if it doesn't have that, you could be found in violation.
Okay. And I think we addressed most of this previously with regard to clarification on the required content of disclosure statement in sub-article 5, section 95.375. Is the intent that manufacturers state that their products comply with Title 17